Benjamin can have love for the truckie. Beautiful minds, but we love getting ugly. Risk takers with a clover, man, we love getting lucky. You run, we chase fire, I love when it ducks me. Tones go off, house watch, read the address out. 1075, get up off the magic couch. 500 gallons prepared for the baddest drought. Who else you want on the way when disaster's out? Can't even get a little bit rattled when you enter with exit apparel. Mayday, member down, they'll drag you. You won't get this from every Tom, Dick, and Harold, but here's a view from the top floor with Mickey Farrell.
What's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of A View from the Top Floor. I'm doing another street talk here in Lower Manhattan. I'm in Tribeca today, Franklin Street, West Broadway. Just something I want to talk about, and I think that needs to get spoken about, and just really dialed in on the fact of terminology. Something that has been mistaken over many, many years in the fire service with a broad stroke understanding of a terminology that was based right here from the roots of New York City. Like right here down the block is where I'm talking, Lower Manhattan. It's the term taxpayer. For whatever reason, it's been reinvented over and over and over. And I think that has a lot to do with the fact that the term taxpayer is not recognized through the National Building Code. So that allowed a lot of room for people to pick up what they wanted to a taxpayer to be. It really blurred the lines of the true definition. I want to clarify. And that said, the clarification I'm going to do over is the actual true meaning of a taxpayer from the firefighter standpoint and from the history standpoint, that they go hand in hand. Because a lot of times when I do talk about this, people say, well, does it really matter what you call it in a commercial building, a taxpayer, a mixed occupancy? Does it really matter? It's store on fire. And it matters quite a bit when we start thinking about tactics, thinking about apparatus positioning, thinking about mindset, skill set, stress. A lot of things go into this. So the term taxpayer, again, started right here in Lower Manhattan, where landowners would take a parcel of land and they would build a one-story wood frame building from the turn of the century leading up to probably the 1920s. Essentially just to pay the taxes on that land. So more people moved into the neighborhood where they could build a multiple dwelling and people could live and they can make revenue on that. Some landowners got smart and they subdivided it, realized that if one storefront is paying the taxes, I can make revenue on a couple other stores. So that's kind of where we got these almost strip malls, because they were making revenue for taxes. On top of that, paying for the future of what this building was going to be. Now, one story, that was the original term. So even over the time within New York City limits, that definition changed quite a bit. Where some may say that, even New York City doesn't use their own terminology the proper way. But you have to understand that we had to put an umbrella over this term. The main takeaway is that it is a commercial occupancy. The second you add residential, it becomes a mixed occupancy building. Very, very different. Very different in the sense of where we position our rigs, very different in positioning as firefighters, and very different in the tempo of fires we go to. So that's why it matters, because a lot of times people are just like, who cares what you call it? Well, that's why it matters, because it matters on how we operate with the fires. All down to that key word, taxpayer. Like I said, we kind of blurred our own lines within the city limits, and the main thing was always commercial. So we added the fact that we can go 2 stories. So turn of the century, 1920, 1-story wood frame. 20 to the 60s, class 3, brick exterior, combustible interior. Most of the fires we fight today, that term taxpayer, those are the fires we're fighting fires in. 60s, moving on to where we are today, we've gotten better with these buildings, with steel decking, concrete floors, so on and so forth. There's just better construction. But the key is commercial. We've also adopted supermarkets, strip malls, all under that umbrella of taxpayer. The key is being commercial. Now, far too often, I'm seeing it in textbooks, I'm hearing on podcasts, I'm seeing it on testable points, fire academies, that the term taxpayer on the ground floor of a residential building is false. It's a mixed use occupancy. Very, very different. And this is why. Because I'm responding, I hear the term taxpayer. Well, if I'm driving a rear mount aerial ladder, I'm not going anywhere near the front of me. So I'm not getting exposure 1. I'm going to try to get the exposure 2 and 4 side with the stick and get it up. Try to access that room, but I'm leaving the front for the tower line. Flip the script. You're responding to a mixed occupancy. If you're the rear mount, you want the front of the building. Game changer. A huge, huge tactical mistake if you don't take the front of the building with the aerial. But it all comes down to the word taxpayer, right? Tempo of the fire. The chief officer outside standing in the street, right? Taxpayer. Different tempo. Now, again, going back to these buildings being built not so well at the turn of the century. Now, past 1960 moving on, they're built much, much better, but still they're dangerous fires. But most of the fires we're going to are the buildings probably from the 40s to the 50s, I would say. They're still not built up to code, but the codes have changed, and they're just shoddy construction, man. Over time, we do a lot of altercations, multiple fires in some of these buildings. Tempo of the fire is dialed back. We're still going into these buildings. We're still fighting these fires, fighting them at a different tempo. All comes down to the word taxpayer. Line selection, right? If you're responding, sounds like a job, taxpayer, you're thinking maybe a 2.5-inch line. You turn the corner and it's a mixed occupancy, but someone gave the transmission taxpayer. Well, it might be a bodega fire. We could stretch it to 3/4, no problem at all. Since we changed our books regarding line selection, it allows for good engine officers to become great engine officers because they can call it on the fly. But it comes back to understanding taxpayer versus mixed occupancy. So these are just some of the things that I've been thinking about as far as this. I'm seeing it too often. It's a good conversation to have at the kitchen table. It's a good drill point. Again, I'm not saying right or wrong. I'm just telling you that this is the honest truth, the brutal truth of where it comes from, the terminology of it, and where it's grown today is because we never really had a national standard. So people kind of interpreting what they want to make for their standard. And if that's the way you operate, that's totally fine. Just make sure everyone is on the same page because the lines are blurred. Region to region, city to city, coast to coast, the lines are very, very blurred in this topic. Just know the history. I really believe that great firemen come from knowing the legacy and history of not only their region they work in or their city, but on the national level, the history of the fire service and where a lot of our terminology comes from. We're very reactive rather than proactive in the fire service. So we have to know our histories to be proactive. We have to know where things come from, where terminology comes from, why we do certain things. And it all comes down to knowing your history. I'm not saying right or wrong. I'm just going with the roots of the history of the terminology. Again, whatever terminology you guys use, that's fine. Embrace it, know it, understand it, study it, pass it along from mutual aid companies or surrounding cities and towns. Everyone's on the same page because when we have miscommunication of terminology, that's where confusion lies. And that's where firemen die. So next time, I'll see you soon. This might be the last street talk doing it outside. But I'll continue to do them. I like jumping on like this. I do have the channel coming up in the next couple of weeks where I'll be doing more of this. We'll have the Mondays, we'll have the actual episodes, and then I'll jump on real quick and do a lot of this kind of stuff as well. Thanks for your support. We'll talk to you soon.